Welcome to the Project, the podcast with the mission to cover every project throughout pop culture and history. I'm Sam.
And I'm Lewis.
And this week we watched an episode of David Attenborough's Passion Projects.
We did his 2016 series where he goes back and looks at some of the great things he's done.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't kind of what I expected, but it's basically a re-showing of a 1971 documentary where he explored Papua New Guinea.
And it was quite fun that he was like, he kind of went like, I normally do like animal nature stuff, and he was like, but I quite like doing more kind of anthropological kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it leads more into that. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty interesting. Like, it doesn't really focus on the wildlife too much in this. It's more just the general vibe of
and
the whole thing.
Like, it was fascinating as well because they kind of mentioned at the time that this was like one of the last times when people would discover uncontacted people.
Exactly. And even the way that it's filmed, like it's in colour and it's got sound. And I know it's 1971, but it would have still been quite a big deal to have that kind of thing with that kind of content at the same time. I imagine this is pretty crazy to be watching.
Some of the stuff I read said this was like groundbreaking, like TV.
I can imagine it was.
It probably one of the things that made David Attenborough as popular as he is today.
Because he talks about his contacts and all that. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. We've got time codes in the episode description, so if you want to skip straight to that, you can do so. Before that, how are you today, Lewis?
Yeah, not bad. We're recording in a different place this time.
Yes.
We've come from the cinema, so it's a bit different, getting some used to. But at the weekend I cut all my hair off.
Yes, you did. Well, not all of it.
Most of my hair off. I did have long brown hair. Now I've got a red mullet.
Yes, you did.
It was all for charity, hence why it's this. But that was kind of the most significant thing that's happened. Raised like £1,000. So
that's very good.
That's all good, but still taking some getting used to. And
I bet
going into work, everyone's kind of like shocked
because I guess some people saw it get cut, didn't they? Or not really. Not really that.
And
many
I
people.
posted pictures and stuff, but then seeing it in person, I guess is
I kind of forgot when I walked up to you outside the cinema. I was like, oh yeah,
But that's going to take some getting used to. But how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, it's still early in the week, but yeah, busy week for me so far. I'm away for the next week as well, so we were just talking before about trying to figure out recording times and that sort of thing. But
don't worry, we won't miss an episode.
I mean, when this episode comes out, I'll be away, so we're recording way ahead. And we've got a nice silver screen project of Meg 2, which will be out now by the time this comes out. Already be out. So don't worry, we've got lots of content for everybody. But yeah, I haven't really got anything to report at the moment. But speaking of reporting, Lewis, what's that first segment?
Have you built that into your thing?
I haven't, but I've done it the last 2 times.
The last 3 times now.
Okay. If it works, it works.
Project News.
That
was a bit of a quieter one because
we're hands-on today. If anyone can't tell.
Yeah. So the first bit of Project News I got, it made me laugh at first, and then it's kind of like, oh, okay, but it's still kind of funny.
Okay.
Harry and Meghan drawn to new film project due to the experiences of childhood trauma.
Okay, yeah.
So
we spoke. Is this the same?
It's something different. So we spoke recently that they were adapting
Great Expectations.
And we were like, that's funny to rich posh people talking about Great Expectations.
The Miss Havisham origin story.
But this is a film deal with Netflix doing the best-selling novel Meet Me at the Lake by author Carly Fortune.
Okay.
The story's about, so tell me if this rings any bells about the people that are making it.
Yeah.
The story focuses on a couple who fell in love in their 30s and deals with themes of childhood trauma and postnatal depression.
Oh dear.
For Meghan and Harry fans, one of the most standout plot points is the death of a parent in a car crash.
Oh, bloody hell. And when was this book released? Probably post all of that for them.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay. I guess what they're like, that's like me.
That's like me. Maybe it's the case that they can't actually make a film about their experiences because of certain legal loopholes. Yeah. Even though The Crown is about to do that bit, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I don't know how exactly. But then the Crown is kind of, I haven't really watched much of it, but it's kind of pro-royal in a lot of ways, isn't it? It goes back and forth, but it's not like although there was that Diana film recently with Kristen Stewart, and that was quite hard-hitting and kind of not expose, but
part of me, I think the cynic in me, because these two have all been about making that money for the last couple of years, is are they kind of cashing in people's love for Diana and being
they're cashing in. That's the whole thing, isn't it? Even though they've probably got bundles of cash, like they've got a lifestyle they're used to, especially Harry, and he's got to maintain it somehow, or just keep in the public eye. It's what he's used to. It's like, I don't want to be in the public eye in that way. I want to be in my own way.
It's never ending ridiculous. And like, I didn't mean to keep talking about Meghan and Harry, but that came up. The other bit of news I've got is an update on Project K, the Indian film all about. It was on at Comic-Con.
Yes, because Comic-Con's been and gone now, isn't it?
Yeah, so they've described it as India's mytho sci-fi epic.
Okay, that makes me think of Eternals, though.
Yeah, so I watched the trailer for it earlier.
Oh yeah.
And it's kind of Star Wars-y.
Okay.
It's set in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was bad, it would be maybe a bit Jupiter Ascending-y.
Okay.
But a lot
of a sci-fi sprawling epic kind of.
Yeah. It's exactly that.
Which is what the Zack Snyder one on Netflix is at the end of the year, so it might have some competition in that regard.
Yeah, but apparently it's going to be the first of like a franchise, essentially.
Okay.
There's another one planned for it. The bad news is the franchise is going to be called Project K, and in the trailer, the one piece of dialogue someone says is like, "This is Project K," but this film is going to be called Kalki 2898 AD.
Oh fuck! Okay.
So they've dropped the Project K,
unless it gets in certain releases, it still has Project K. If it's any release, when they do, as we did last week, the multiple titles of Shadow Chaser 4, if there's any way we can stick it in there.
They're still like promoting the Project K thing, so they're going with that as like the franchise thing. So it might be like Project K, Kalki 2898 AD.
I mean, if it's released, if it's anywhere, if it's titled anywhere as that, we can definitely slide it in. Or we can just add that at the front when we cover it.
Yeah. Because I think if they're making it a franchise under like the Project
K, Project K, yeah.
But it's got a release date in India of the 12th of January 2024.
Okay,
it hasn't got a worldwide release yet, but if it's out in India, there'll probably be ways to watch it come January.
I mean, it may be Netflix picks it up because, as with RRR, Bali, plenty of there was the bank heist one I mentioned earlier in the year that came straight to Netflix and didn't have a cinema release. So it might be something similar. That would be. It depends. Quite often, Netflix probably put the money aside and they see how it performs in the country of origin, and then they go, we'll take it.
But I feel like this is going to be a big deal in India. The fact it was at Comic-Con and stuff,
and maybe it will go to cinemas then, because after RRR getting Oscar nominations, they might be like, we're going to try and get some international release.
And like the trailer does look good. It doesn't look like RRR type like Bollywood.
Not
feel.
Too like. It's anime over the top.
There's a couple of bits that are like, okay, but
it's got to have a bit of that.
But it's like a Western superhero film in a lot of ways. But with kind of these Star Wars elements to it. So I think it looks interesting.
As long as they retain some of that over the topness in a way, that will be the key. Because if it's exactly the same, I don't know how well it will do. If it's just
it'd have to be like really good to make an impact on the Western market, but. Fingers crossed it's good. It's been released in Tamil and Hindi first, but it'll be dubbed for British and American audiences.
Although even a lot of those, when they're on Netflix, they're still subtitled. So you get the two versions, and it doesn't matter which one you watch for us because they're. And when did you say it was released? End of the year? January. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah,
I was thinking about something else.
Start next year. So that's okay. Cool. I was a bit disappointed they've changed the name, but. Yeah, we'll see. The fact they've not dropped the Project K. No,
it's not like because it's when they do it as a pre thing. That's when it scuppers us, isn't it? It's like working title and then
The panel at Comic-Con was called "This is Project K: First Glimpse of India's Mytho Sci-Fi Epic." Right. So it might be that like. If it gets a British or American release, it's titled Project K.
Project K with a subtitle maybe, or even just Project K, and the second one is Project K2.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be the hope anyway,
But so that is Project News for the week, which means we can go into the main topic, which is Attenborough's passion projects, a blank on the map.
Yeah.
So as we said, it's released in 16, and it's looking back on Attenborough's favourite things.
Was it celebrating his 90th birthday? I think they said
something
somewhere.
like that.
Or coming up to his 90th birthday.
So this is, but it's got a little introduction
from
and
present day Attenborough.
And a bit at the end of him like retelling it.
That was quite interesting actually when he did the end bit,
but then the main bit is just watching through this documentary from 1971.
Yeah, which was cool. 1971, and the kind of we kind of teased it earlier. It was, he talks about how there's areas of the map that at this point hadn't been discovered by Western civilization or whatever. He kept saying Europeans, but really it would be more like Australians, wouldn't it, because of the location.
Yeah. But I mean, he means like ethnic.
He means
white men.
He means Caucasian people, or
they've done like flyovers. They've kind of and they can see there's like open spaces like gardens and stuff. Yeah. So they're like, there's people here who have never met people outside, essentially. Which is quite a cool thing, because those things kind of don't really happen anymore. I was this did put me down a rabbit hole of looking up like uncontacted people.
I was wondering if there was any updates on these guys since the areas and that.
So I'll talk about some of them at the end. But there's North Sentinel Island.
Yes, that's the one where they throw spears at everyone and they try and approach.
People get killed.
Yeah.
Apparently they used to be more friendly, but I think one of their people got killed or something, and since then, like, anyone that goes there dies.
A lot of the stuff they talk about in this is like building the relationships with these uncontacted people and that sort of thing.
I thought it's really nice as well. Attenborough focused on like, you don't want to go there and like show off all our fancy tech. It's not about that. It's looking at our similarities.
The rich people giving to the poor. He talks about building a basis of trade and stuff quite a lot.
And he's like, the fascination is the similarities rather than differences, and that's what I thought as well. I was like,
and some of the stuff he mentions, like laughing and all these things, and you just know immediately what the vibe is with that kind of thing. But he did you want to talk about, did you have any background stuff at all or anything? It's not
so
really
the only background I could find is that it's starring David Attenborough.
Okay. Well, we did that bit.
But I've got the episode description.
Go for it.
In this important 1970s documentary that put David Attenborough's name on the map, he goes to Papua New Guinea to learn about one of the least explored regions on the planet and the tribes who live there.
Fair.
Essentially what we said. Do you want to do the IMDb guest series and episode?
Oh my gosh. Series 7.5.
Nope, you'd be wrong. It's an 8.3.
Oh, yeah. I should have known, so episode is normally higher. So it was at 8.3, you said?
Yeah.
8.5?
Oh, see, normally is the key word there.
Okay.
It's 8.2. I did have a look. So
that's close, though.
So this is the lowest ranked episode of this little 4-part series that you did.
Okay, well that's interesting to know.
Like, an 8.2 is a pretty good score. So
that is, that's interesting to know. Then, okay, we've got places to go.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was a 4, didn't you say before? There's four.
There's
of
these.
four
of these. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. I haven't really looked at what the other ones are, but
I think the next one started playing after I finished, but I turned it off quickly. It was just him going, like, about to do his intro again as an old man. I was like, shut up, David. Shut up, David. Are we getting into it?
Yeah. Let's do it.
So it does the bit with the intro. He talks about how, as I mentioned at the start, he normally does stuff to do with animals, to do with nature and that sort of thing, and this is more of an anthropological kind of thing. He uses different words, but that's
he basically says, like, because like his main thing's animals, everyone knows him for animals. He's got all these really interests that he never really has a place to show them.
Yes, that's it.
So this is basically what that is.
This is it. And he talks about, it's 1971, and I think I can't remember if this is actually with I think it cuts back and forth at the start and before it gets fully into it. But he basically said he had some pals in Australia, and they had this contact with the group of police that would go out and do these patrols once a year for both helping out and for exploration. He was like, let me know when the next one is. I want to come along. And in 1971, he gets the call to go along.
It's 1967 actually. Then the film was released in 1971.
Okay. That kind of makes more sense.
Which is a key difference in a bit of trivia I've got actually.
Okay.
But I liked as well. We get the intro, and I was like, it screams like 90s BBC intro. It's like a film, like frames going across the different pictures of Attenborough, and I was like,
it kind of zooms in. It kind of gave us a little preview because it says the years, I guess, of the 4 things. It was like So 60, whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, I found like straight away as we went into it, we go back to the 60s.
Yeah.
I was like, it's so funny seeing this young David Attenborough who, like, I think because he's younger, he seems posher. But at the same time, like, his speaking mannerisms and his like hands movement is exactly the same.
I found, you know what? I did do a couple of searches after is David Attenborough gay, because he's quite flamboyant and he's a little bit kind of fruity in this one here.
I think he's just posh.
I think he's just posh, yeah. And it's something about the whole vibe. I think you're right. I think it's just posh man who. There's also moments in this where it's like, maybe you should help out a little bit more, but we
I watched this with Christine, and there was a few bits where I was like, if they'd done this now, they'd do it quite differently.
They would. They're basically using a lot of the local guys to carry the stuff. 100 of them, basically.
And like they go around just like not really thinking, just go around touching everything and playing with everything.
When they go into the places. Yeah, so most of this episode is from the journey of them kind of traveling through until they get to kind of the area they want to, because they talk about it being like a couple of weeks trek, and I think it ends up being like 4 weeks before they get to the area they want to. There's a whole bit at the start about talking about how useful airplanes are and how they can use them to map, and they kind of talk about the different rivers, and it shows them, he's with his Australian mate and they're kind of planning out the route on a map.
Yeah, and they say Laurie Bragg.
Yeah, and they take about, he's a bit of a brag, isn't he? They talk about how they can use the river up to a certain point, but then they'll be walking, and they're like, it's going to be a difficult walk. We're walking just through the jungle.
And there's a lot of, because they hire like 100, there's some police and other like locals in Papua New Guinea.
They're like porters, basically.
Yeah, and they talk about how like so much of it is like carrying everything through the jungle with so many people.
Yeah.
At one point, he was like, for every person you've got that's got like your cameras and stuff, you need 2 people carrying food and their food, and like the bigger group you get, so they get like an airplane drop later on because they just can't carry enough stuff for like 4 weeks. And then they
talk about after that, they're like, well, it was great because we had a great meal that night, and then the next day all the bags were heavier because
we had to carry.
There's moments where he's talking about that, and then it just shows him walking along without a bag, without a water bottle.
He's never carrying anything.
He looks like a scout leader, but without even the bag on. He's just kind of like prancing through the forest, and I'm just like, mate, like at least carry like your own stuff.
I'm sure because it's like 4 weeks. I'm sure there's lots of bits off camera where he's doing his fair bit.
I'm sure based on like, because also they're carrying film and recording equipment as well. So I imagine they're not filming all the time. Although they mentioned at one point that a cameraman slept with the camera under his bed, so he was ready
just
to record.
In case,
but they're still not recording all the time, kind of thing.
Yeah, and they talk about how like these tribes that live in like the wilderness, essentially, like they're in contact with many of them. They're still quite isolated, but they basically go. They said they like get them to stop their like tribal fights, feuds, and they like teach them their lore and stuff.
Yeah, and some of that is a bit
inputting your culture on theirs.
Towards the end, they mention that as well. He's like, give them education, and it's like, yeah, they're educated, just not in your way, kind of thing.
But a lot of it is like bringing like medical stuff.
There's some stuff quite early on.
Yeah, we see one guy with a huge ulcer on the bottom of his foot, and I was like, he would struggle to walk on that. That could like kill him.
Absolutely, yeah.
Some of these tribes are nomadic as well. Like, that would fuck you up.
There's a bit where before they head off, where they're talking about like the dangers and stuff, and he says something about some tribes still cut off people's heads in like ritualistic murders, and like mold them with clay, and like which reminded me actually of the Shadow Chaser thing last week with like the clay bust of Shadow Chaser. I was like, and they said like in ritual murder or two in remote parts isn't rare, and I was like, okay.
But yeah, this first time they meet with the guy with the ulcer, they're very like
they go on the river for 3 days, then they get to the point where it's this village, which I think it's called
Inaru. And they're all like really excited because it means they've got medical supplies and stuff.
Yeah. And there was a cool bit here with they say they survive on vegetables and catfish. And they're like, also there's this mayfly season. And it just happens to be the day that they're there, which is mad.
Like once a year.
And it's kind of crazy. Like they all get, because mayflies is like a whole thing. They live for like a day. They live for a day, I think.
Yeah.
And then they all die. And there's all these kind of like, almost like daddy long legs, like kind of quite gross little like things, and they all die in the river at the same time, and they're all kind of scooping them up, and then they just eat them.
Just eat them. They said they're still squirming.
Yeah, they say like oysters or something like that.
Yeah,
they just munch them like oysters.
But they talk about here as well about how like every one of these like little villages have like their own language.
Yes,
and like some of them are kind of similar, but a lot of them are just completely developed separately.
Yeah,
so they're like they have some translators.
Yeah, so they wanted to get some guys from near this village to interpret for the uncontacted people.
Yeah,
and these are the tribe that's nomadic, and they asked the local guys at Nauru, and they're like, when did you last see them? And they're like, oh, it was like a month ago, a few of them went through, and they're like, great, so we don't have anyone. And I think like one of the police guys from the like more civilized area stays behind to go look for them, and he catches up with them a bit later on.
They just send him out, and I was like, they've gone through all this like woods. He catches up with them like a week later.
Yeah, he's obviously
like, this guy's just gone out and lived in the wilderness for a week.
Much more competent than that.
Yeah. But they talk about how they have to carry everything on their shoulders now they're walking. And there's this cool bit here where they have to build a bridge over a river.
Yeah, they do like a proper suspension bridge, and it looks like the kind of thing from like Temple of Doom, like the proper like hanging bridge.
But it's all made of like these cables. They
kind of like
them.
vine kind of things, aren't they? Yeah, almost it's like a mixture between a bamboo and a vine, isn't it?
Yeah,
and they like strip parts off,
and they're like 500 foot long. Yeah, I was like, that's pretty.
And it's got to be able to carry these like 100. I think they say 106 men. I don't know if that's the porters plus the crew. I don't know.
No, but
it's around 100, just over 100 people either way.
But they say they're going to need an airdrop at some point.
Yeah.
So they've kind of pre-planned that out with a pilot of like drawn it on a map. But they say they're walking through and there's just like no clearings whatsoever in this forest. It's just like thick forest for like days and days, and they have to like
they stop at 4 o'clock each afternoon because they've been walking all day.
Yeah, they just cut down some trees.
Clearing. And one of the first things they do is climb up and they get the guys to climb up, put a radio antenna up, because the Australian guy radios back to base camp every night to report where they've got to.
Good,
and all that
good to know where they are and stuff.
Yeah, and it was quite interesting. They had the maps, they like the aerial photography, and there was like a notch at the top, and he was like, "Yeah, we're just under the notch. If you go down to the river, just north of the river, kind of thing." It's like, it's quite basic kind of map system there, cartography.
Yeah, they've been walking for like a couple of weeks at this point, and they get like a day off to rest and to like heal, because they've all got like cuts and bruises and stuff. And
is this the bit where they're like, one guy's got malaria, or is that?
Yeah, it's like one guy's got malaria. And like it. But yeah, this is where Attenborough's like, because we're like 100 people marching through the forest, like the wildlife we don't really see much.
Yes, yeah.
And like now we've got this day off, we get to see the wildlife, and this is where you get some of the classic Attenborough stuff.
He kind of goes through. He says there's no big mammals in New Guinea because of just the way the island system works, kind of thing.
There's loads of
birds of paradise, and he talks about them for a bit, and tree kangaroos, which are kind of like more like kind of sloth kind of things.
Yeah, he said they've got like the body of kangaroos, but he said they're so clumsy sometimes they just fall out the trees. Yeah. And I was like, that's like a sloth.
He's literally like, why did you climb this tree? Kind of thing. I'm like, mate, it's not going to answer you. And he's just kind of being a bit more poetic about it. Like, with a body like this, why would you climb a tree?
Yeah, I read once that sloths like sometimes mistake their own arms for branches and just fall out.
This is when the guy catches up with them, and he's like, oh, bad news, we can't find the interpreter from the nomad guys, so we're going in pretty much blind. Although they say that, but like this guy, the police guy, plus a couple of other locals, they still have some very basic language, like words and that sort of like single words and that sort of thing, but nothing.
They talk about here as well is that like a lot of these trees have like these barbed thorns coming out of them, so you have to like constantly look where you're like putting your hands. And I was like, God, that sounds awful.
And it shows while they're doing that, it shows one of the porter guys walking past, and he just hasn't got any shoes on. So I guess some of the guys that live like fairly locally are just used to just walking around without shoes.
I did see as well, there was a couple of things that had like two guys carrying it, one at the front, one at the back. And like the box in between just had loads of these thorns in it. I was like, okay.
It's pretty spiky. This is when I noticed that like he's not carrying any of his stuff, and I'm like, okay, mate. Oh yeah, and they noticed like a break in one of the saplings, and they're like, get really excited because they're like, either previous expeditions come through, but because it was a sapling, I guess it was within the year since the last expedition. And then they find out, they're looking on the map, they're going by compass most of the time.
Yeah.
And I guess they're marking where they think they are on the map kind of thing. And they realize that they're going on this ridge that seems to be like the most convenient route. And when they see the breaks, they're like, this must be a route that people just use
because it just makes sense. It's like the nature's path was like, you might as well follow where other people have been. But yeah, they get to this clearing and find like a house, or like he says it's like it's more like a fortress. It's like built on stilts. And
this is a bit creepy kind of thing. It's almost like a kind of Blair Witchy kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Because it's only the two, there's like two main white guys. It's David and Laurie. And they're quite often the guys on camera doing the stuff. And they kind of go down away from the big group. Yeah. Because it's like 100. It is like an invasion. They even say that with Inaru at the start. They're like, we outnumber the village here. So it's like an intrusion.
Yeah.
The whole of us.
And like they talk about like they haven't got enough food to like offer us food, but they're like they're friendly, but like we can't take the piss.
Yeah, they kind of sneak down to this place, and this is the kind of shit where you say like they'd probably be a bit more careful and respectful nowadays.
Yeah, because I mean they say they don't know if they're going to be friends or foes, and like the entrance is like barricaded.
Yeah, it's like a big heavy like slab of wood.
But Laurie like reaches his arm in and pulls
he like
it
manages to like unlock it kind of thing,
and it's like deserted. They go inside. There's like a narrow corridor.
Yeah, it's almost like a little maze style entrance. Yeah, to like it would be to like a castle, like to funnel the attackers kind of thing.
Yeah, they go into the room. There's loads of like arrows and stuff in there. Yeah, it's interesting. There's like different types of arrows. There was some that were like killing pigs, and there's some like harder ones that are like, this would be for people.
yeah, they say it's like for killing. Like he talks to somebody or he's talked to someone before or after, and he's like, these are war arrows. Like, and they were nicely decorated, and they had different ivory tips, or not ivory, but something like that.
And there's lots of like, there's like some eggs and stuff hung up. And like pig jaws and like piglet jaws.
Some of it's like almost instrument kind of things, or at least for making sound, like bead kind of bells.
He kind of says that in a lot of like Papua New Guinea places, pigs are seen as like what's the words, like
not sacred.
Sacred.
Oh, sacred. Yeah, okay.
So, but then he's just going around there like just picking them up and having a look, and I was like, no, I don't think you do that anymore.
It's quite interesting when we get the kind of hindsight bit at the end when he's present day Attenborough. He shows his journal that he made while he's on the trip. Yeah, and it's got like a little kind of map. What would you call it? Like a blueprint almost of that cabin, and it's got written down in which corner different things were.
He said he just took loads of notes. He didn't know like what was important. Kind of like what we do with this.
We're just like David Attenborough, of course.
There's these cool daggers as well that have made from like the leg of a guinea ostrich, they say.
Right.
But they've got like carvings in the tips that are really intricate, like doodles essentially.
That's those cassowary things. You know, like sometimes you see like in Dinosaur or like Walking with Beasts, there's like the big birds. There's like the modern ones of them that are smaller. I think that's the thing. And they mention the cassowary quills or the feathers later for the decorative stuff. It's the same kind of thing.
It is all fascinating how they've got like all these decorations.
But the whole time, like I'm thinking like you're in someone's house. You're in someone's house.
I was so anxious this entire time he was in the house. I think it's the fact he was going around touching everything, and he was like, we don't know where they are. I was just like, they're going to come home every second and kill you, David.
Like, we know that didn't actually happen, but you never know, like something might have happened. Yeah. And then they kind of just leave that place and go to the next thing.
They're like, there's nothing there. Yeah, this is where they say they've got this preset airdrops. They need to get to that place on time. And they like fell some trees and put out like a tarpaulin so the pilot can find it. And this bit was funny because the pilot comes down, you see them drop the stuff, and it's like 2 miles away.
He's literally just chucking stuff out the window.
and everyone's all like the locals that work with them are clearly like pissed off because they're like, that's our fucking food. We can go into the forest to find it.
And then like the second and third run round, he like drops them a bit lower and stuff like that.
Yeah, and they're much better. Like,
but you'd think like an airdrop, like military wise, it's got a little parachute on it, and even then, like in Vietnam, they would have been using.
Yeah, they're just throwing stuff.
I guess it's lower budget, because don't they have like sheets out to try and catch it or whatever?
Yeah,
and it's like completely missing the sheets.
And they say they've got 18 bags to find just in this general vicinity in the forest.
Yeah, and this is when they're like, oh yeah, that night we had a massive slap up meal, and I was like, maybe you should still ration a little bit.
Yeah, because they said that like, oh, everyone's looking forward to the food because we're on like minimal rations at this point.
Yeah.
And then they have this huge feast. I'm like, that's just gonna mean you're on rations again. Like,
it is. Yeah, there's a bit I kind of didn't make massive notes in the middle, but they talk about a couple of different other wildlife things they see. They mention leeches, platypus, and snakes a couple of times.
Yeah, he gets a leech in his leg, and there's this like harmless python, this green python in the branches. That looks quite cute.
Yeah.
And it's David Attenborough being fascinated by the wildlife he does.
So I guess after that, they probably stayed there for a few days to eat some of the food. So that's probably why they're seeing the stuff.
But when they set out again, they find a trap. And it's like a trap for like wild pigs.
Yeah.
And they're like, doesn't work,
already,
but
kind of
it's a sign that people do come round here.
Yeah. And then he says like they're pretty depressed at this point because they haven't found any people.
It's the 25th day.
Yeah. And they're just going around just shouting the name of the tribe because that's the only word they know.
And they say they're 3 days away from like the other side of Papua New Guinea where there's like known people again.
Right, okay.
So we're running out of like space essentially. So, it's the Biami tribe.
Right.
Who they think are like, and it's just a guy running around going, Biami. Biami. And they don't even know if that's the word for the tribe. It's just that's the one word they know that they speak. So they're like, okay. And then it like rains and they're like, oh, this is horrible.
So shit,
So like in a fucking film, like just at the lowest point. Then the Biami appeared. It's just like these like 6 guys who are just like, hi.
And that first bit's really cool because like there's kind of a tense vibe because they're not fully relaxed. And the thing that I noticed is they're staring down the barrel of the camera because obviously they've never seen it. It's probably pretty big as well. And they've probably been reassured of the camera kind of thing, like to the best of they can. But yeah, there's no common language apart from like the names of places.
Yeah, so they talk about like local rivers to kind of have a conversation.
Yeah.
And they ask, they want to see like their women and their children and their food to get like a better understanding. Because like they clearly just come across like the hunters or something. Yeah. And it's like to get a better idea of the culture, you can't just base it on
just the six
men that are out there.
Yeah, and they're trying to do this basis of trade thing, and they're trying to communicate it as best they can. And this is when they bring out some stuff that they can give them and kind of start this trade. And they bring out newspaper, which is normally used for rolling cigarettes, because they say that all the local tribes grow tobacco for themselves.
Yeah.
They normally use like dried leaves.
We see like a couple of these tribes just like smoking. I was like, it just seems so wild to me that this tribe that have like never contacted people are there smoking. It's like smoking is like a natural human thing, it turns out.
Yeah, very funny. And then one of the things they like is the salt, isn't it? Because they have like they must have a big sack of salt amongst these. They pour some out onto like a big banana leaf, and they're like.
And to be fair, if they're hunting pigs, like a nice bit of crackling.
Yeah,
like.
Absolutely. they love that. But with the newspaper, they don't understand what it's for, and they're kind of crunching it up, and because it's got words and pictures, I guess they're like, oh, whatever. And they think it's like, he says it's like a useless memento to them, and they have to kind of be shown, and they get shown how to like roll with it kind of thing. And then this is the bit where they have like just what just looks like normal rolled cigarettes. And it's like,
that was another thing that I was like, these days, at least you wouldn't show it on TV. Like one of the first things you do this uncontrolled tribe is give them some fags.
It's just like salt and fags as well.
But the one thing that now that they've kind of given them salt and these cigarettes, they're kind of more comfortable with them.
Yeah,
they want to have a look at their like ornaments. They've all got like
I think
nose piece.
That's the next day. So they
you're right.
It goes to like that night, and they've got radio trouble. Like it's a bit, one of the wires is a bit damaged or whatever. Yeah, and then the next day there's this bit where the same guys just come back, and they've got like these kind of net bags, which just look like the like Keep shopping bags that we've got now. Yeah, it's like people have been doing this for a long time.
But they basically come back with some of their food because they want to make a trade.
And David Attenborough's just like, it wasn't really enough for us, but like it was nice to do a little start to the whole procedure.
And this is when it's like he woke up in like the next morning. I think he says this at the end, but he woke up the next morning and the tribe were just there.
They were just there,
and the cameraman was already rolling.
Yeah. And yeah, this is when he's like, he gets right up in these guys' faces and they seem to be quite happy with it and quite chill.
Yeah.
He's just like leaning over, he's doing a proper dominant stance with his leg up on this rock.
Yeah.
And he's just pointing at the earring like, what's this kind of thing?
Yeah.
And trying to get the words for the different things.
And there's some bones and stuff. There's one funny bit where he's like, I was intrigued about like this wooden peg that the guy had in his nose.
Yeah.
And he took it out and showed him and he was like, oh, it's a wooden peg.
It's like, it's just a wooden peg.
Yeah.
This bit I found really fascinating with the counting. So they one of the things they can talk
this was
about
amazing.
Is
so that they did it by getting them to name all the rivers and count them.
Yeah, and they do the 5. Well, they start from the little finger, which is
and they do it backwards. They start with their hand open,
right,
and they put little finger down as 1.
Yeah.
And then that finger, and then middle finger, index, thumb, and then they get their other hand for 6. It's finger on the wrist.
6 was wrist, then middle of forearm
was 7,
then increase of elbow
is 8,
and then bicep, then
9,
shoulder,
10,
and then neck, and then
neck
like head
11,
or whatever.
And then and I was like, that is
that was really cool. That was one of my favorite bits. That was like the differences and similarities in one, because it's just like, it's even, you see like the example I can think of is Inglourious Bastards with their how you do the 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like there's these small cultural differences, but that's like, it's not a big difference, but it felt quite kind of novel kind of thing.
And it's just like, obviously they just developed a way and they all know it.
Yeah.
So, and they know exactly where that finger basically means. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
I remember reading about, I think it was an Aborigine tribe.
Right. Yeah.
Who have like a base 20 counting system.
Okay.
So obviously ours is base 10, but it's because they include their toes when they count. So like they count to 20 just using their fingers and toes. They've got a base 20 system. I was like, that's kind of fascinating.
I feel like that's really inconvenient, but
but I guess if
not for them, obviously,
if they're like if they don't wear like shoes or socks or anything, it's not that different.
I'm just thinking then you've got to kind of reach down, but I guess you kind of maybe you sit when you count or you crouch down or something like that.
But
that was really cool.
And that they find out the name for the tree kangaroo is like Silam or something in their language, because they're like, they point and talk to her and they're like, Salam,
and
Salam.
they do the cassowary and like the tree turkey or whatever, and David Attenborough's kind of going brr, brr, and doing like actions. He's like, he knows you kind of got to just get into it. And
David Attenborough's
and there's a bit where a guy like proper starts laughing at him. And it's like, it's very funny.
It's a good bonding thing, like, because it's the sort of thing like laughing is like
just universal. So
like. Which is funny, because it's like monkeys are like the opposite. Like when I went to the Isle of Wight, I went to the Monkey Haven thing,
and that's like a bad thing.
It's showing your teeth is a sign of like anger. Yeah. So
although chimpanzees do that kind of laughter thing, but is that mimicking us that they've learned?
Quite possibly,
maybe? But the teeth thing is
thing. So when you laugh and you're showing your teeth, it's like
they don't like that.
Being angry. But they tried to trade some more. This is funny because they offer them beads. Apparently beads are
I don't think I wrote this bit down.
And these guys are just like, they look at them and they're like, why are you giving us little glass beads?
The police guy that gives them the beads, he's got it in like a big plastic like bag that's he opens it and then puts it down like so they can reach in. And I'm like, if they've not seen plastic before, like, which they might not have, a little open plastic thing on the floor isn't the most inviting thing to just like put your hand into.
Yeah, apart from the Tesco bags they've got in their bag.
Well, they were like net ones, weren't they? Not actual bag for life.
But they're like, we want to keep these ratios up, so we'll just give them more salt.
Yeah,
because
they
like
give them loads more salt, and they like wrap them up really expertly in these leaves and stuff.
Yeah.
Then he talks about it being like a 4-week march to get their illnesses, etc. He's like, is it worth it? And it's like, yeah, pretty much it was. Like it was.
Yeah, and he talks.
He talks about if it turns out there's natural resources in the area, like it could have a really bad fate for these people.
David Attenborough being David Attenborough is always the nicest man in the world. And he was like, these people wouldn't survive like an influx of outsiders because they've got diseases and stuff.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Both ways, it's quite a scary.
And they're like, it needs to be gradual. And he this way he talks about like he easily could have wowed them with our tech and stuff, but like tricks and that seem trivial. It's the similarities that are more important. Yeah. And I was like, that was just such like a nice message. Because I was when I was watching it, I was just like, oh, these people are really interested. But when he said that, I was like, actually, no, you're right. It is these similarities that are fascinating.
Like, when you see them kind of having a little like non-verbal moment with somebody else, or like the laughter, or whatever.
He says at the end, like, you crack a joke. Obviously, we can't speak the languages, but it's like a raised eyebrow at a certain point. It's funny, and they all laugh together. And I was like, it's cute.
It is kind of crazy, and it's like you say, it's the stuff that this is one of the last moments of this, at least documented kind of thing.
Yeah,
I mean, you could document it way easier now, but you know, it's much harder to find these, you know, original, unique moments now, because most people have had these experiences at least once in the world now.
Yeah,
it's just, I'm sure there's some places somewhere still that are completely uncontacted by outsides.
Yeah, worlds, probably,
but it's much rarer.
The next step is that they want to see where they live, so they like ask if they can see their house.
This bit, yeah.
And the guys kind of like, they invite them along and like walk off.
But I think it's kind of unclear when they start walking whether they've actually invited them or not.
Yeah,
because they kind of keep turning around and they kind of the expressions change a little bit.
Yeah,
and as they kind of get a bit of distance, they're kind of looking back like, why are you following us, kind of thing.
And eventually they lose them like through the forest.
Yeah,
Laurie tries like shouting the name again, and they're like, there's only one thing to do at this point. Keep on going. I was thinking, no, go back.
Absolutely, go back. Yeah,
go back. But
they just disappeared into
and they go and find this house. Essentially, like there's no one there.
Yeah,
but there's like a human skull like on display outside, and I was like, oh,
yeah, no, that's where you turn around, and there's like they see the fire is like recently smouldering kind of thing. So either that was where they were just before they came over, or they cleared people out like really quickly. Kind of thing. They said it was only like 200 yards ahead of where they were, so they probably didn't have a chance to pack up.
Yeah, I was reading actually when I was doing some research on these uncontacted tribes.
Yeah,
there's a couple of uncontacted tribes in North Brazil.
Okay, yeah,
and apparently a couple of these tribes used to be, I think in Peru actually, a couple of these tribes used to be in contact with the locals, but decided that they wanted to go back to isolation, so cut off contact and went back, and because they're nomadic, they can avoid like roads and diggers and stuff. And they're like, actually, we've seen what you do. We prefer to be on our own.
I feel like that's fair, to be honest. So then they have a little look round, and they don't really find much in there any different to what they found before, really. I think it's even more bare than that, the house they found before.
Yeah. So they go back, and they say like 2 days later they're back in known countries, so it's kind of the end of the expedition. But they're like, in a year someone else might come through and the BRME will be like more trustful because they've already met people, so like it's the building that relationships. And
they say they got like some river names from them, and they've got different altitudes they mapped along the way and stuff.
So it's like this blank on a map now has a line through it and some names of rivers, and I was like, that is how like classic exploration happened. Yeah,
and it's fascinating to see that. Like, I haven't watched masses of films about this kind of thing, but I know there's a film called like The Lost City, Z the Lost City, or Z the Lost City, which has Charlie Hunnam. I think Robert Pattinson might be in it, and that's set like Victorian times, but I think it's Amazon exploration or something like that, or maybe it's like an El Dorado kind of thing.
Yeah, quite.
But it's based on a true thing, and I imagine that's a similar experience to this, but it couldn't document it because it was in like 1890 or
I've always found it fascinating. Like, you see from obviously a European white perspective, but like the discovery of the world with like through maps and stuff. And when like you first discover the Americas, and it's literally just like the coastlines and stuff, and like they have no idea what goes beyond that. Like, it's just wilderness.
And it's like that. This is like a concentrated version of that, isn't it? Just to an area in the middle of Papua New Guinea. And
they walk through it for like a month essentially, so it's quite a big area that's just blank.
And you'd have to do that back and forth however many times to get the full thing. And then we go back to old David.
I've literally written back to old David.
And he kind of goes back through some of the key moments, and he says, like, when he went to that first like fortress house, he was like, I was actually way more nervous than I made out.
He was like, people have probably been killed here.
Yeah, they talk. I think he says about some stories he heard of people who would approach something like that and just get an arrow in the chest, and then they're gone.
And he's like, he was like, I was way more nervous than it seemed on camera. It's a funny bit here where he talks about how like, because these like locals do this almost every year. He was determined to like keep up and show his work, so they didn't want to see them as like, oh, these useless white guys, and there's like. So that's why he probably did carry his stuff at times, but they're like the
there's a
stamina
bit
and
where
stuff.
he's like, when they're doing a river crossing, they're holding some rope to guide people across, and you do see him helping with that.
Yeah.
And he's like waist deep in like a flowing river, and it's the one bit you see him actually kind of helping out.
But I guess at the time he was like, no, for the filming bits, I'm meant to be the presenter. Yeah. And then they talked about how like they nearly gave up, and then he woke up and saw a man looking at him.
Yeah, it was the bit with the camera onto the bed. He's like, thank God that guy was so prepared, because otherwise we would have missed that initial moment.
Yeah, and he was like, it can be like worrying finding like these people, because you don't know the reaction's going to be like. But he was like, they just seem more confused than anything else.
It was a very nice vibe. Like there's this curiousness, there's a bit of like unsureness in that first meeting, but generally speaking there's kind of kindness on the faces, and kind of they seem like they're kind of more intrigued and kind of puzzled than like that
just as fascinated as like David is,
exactly,
which is cool.
It was really cool. Yeah, I think overall like that whole section at the end was like by far the best part of all this. Like the rest of it, although it was interesting like going on this expedition, it's like that we've seen stuff before.
It's exactly that. Like it was interesting, like the wildlife stuff that you touched on. It's like it is interesting, it always is. But we've seen it before. The talking to these uncontacted tribes, like never really seen before, and it's like
it was really cool. Yeah.
And that was the end of the episode, and I was like, damn, that was good.
Yeah,
that was good.
I don't imagine. Although you said this was the lowest rated one, unless he somehow goes to more uncontacted tribes. I feel like we won't have moments exactly like that in the future
I imagine this will be the only one about uncontacted tribes. The next one will be like, I don't know, he looks at crabs.
I know, I feel like they're all non-animal ones, I think, but maybe not.
There might be like a plant one where he looks at fascinating plants. I
mean, maybe. I think the idea of like botany in general is interesting, but I find it's hard to make it interesting, if that makes sense. Like I feel like if I got into it myself, I'd be quite like, then I feel like if I was talking to people about it, I'd be boring, you know?
If anyone's going to make botany interesting though, it's David Attenborough.
Yeah, that's true.
And he'll get some cool like Venus flytrap or something.
Even in that Life in Colour one that you mentioned earlier in the year, there's bits about plants and UV and all that sort of thing in there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching the rest of this. I've got one bit of trivia, which so it led me down a bit of a so my first thing was I was intrigued about like the Biami tribe now,
right?
So I googled the Biami tribe.
That's what I was thinking.
There's there's a tribe in South America also called the Biami tribe, weirdly enough.
Okay.
But Biami tribe in Papua New Guinea, the first like 4 articles I read were like the cannibal tribe Biami in Papua New Guinea.
Oh shit.
And I was like, wait, what? Because they seemed really friendly.
Yeah.
And then I did some research, and there was a couple of people who were like, oh, it's actually quite wrong that they're given this whole moniker of being cannibals.
Right, okay.
Apparently they did used to practice cannibalism
up
until about 1970. So after this interaction,
wow, okay,
and apparently it was mostly like,
I mean, hence the skull there, I guess.
Yeah, but apparently it wasn't like an
aggressive kind of thing.
It was kind of. It wasn't like a tribal like what's it called when you kill
like
something?
Feud. Oh, not a sacrificial.
It wasn't like a sacrificial thing.
Okay.
Apparently it was mostly like a revenge thing. So if somebody kills one of their people, their way they'll kill them and eat them to kind of make a point. So like it wasn't common that they'd eat people, and it was mostly just to be like, fuck you.
I mean, in like a small community, it's not like sustainable to eat people for
and
it's a treat, isn't it, more than anything?
If you become too much cannibals, you're just going to antagonize everyone, and everyone will be like hunting you. So it's quite interesting that like, and then when I was reading into this as well, I came across like a Papua New Guinea forum that was about this article that somebody had written about how it's actually a bad thing. And there was a couple of people in this forum who are descendants of people in the Biami tribe.
Oh, fair.
And they kind of explained about how like, no, it was a a ritual revenge thing of
so
drawing a line
almost sacrificial, but not in a religious way. More of
it's kind of like to draw a line under this crime that's been committed.
It's what they said so like almost ending that completely, like wiping them off the face of the earth and all.
Yeah,
I guess it's like they said about the ritual murders earlier on in this. That's pretty much what they're referring to.
Yeah,
but ritual is in like almost as a judicial kind of
rather than religious.
Religious. Yeah,
but they talked about how like as they got more contact with people, they cut these things out, and then by 1970, so between when this was filmed and when it was released, was when they were like, actually, let's stop with the cannibalism.
Yeah,
and I thought the fact that there was these people on these forums who are descendants, I guess they have been like,
well, that's one of the things
to the rest of Papua New Guinea.
Mention when they're talking about building up the relationships. David Attenborough says like about giving them access to medicine, which obviously we saw earlier on, and he mentions education, which is kind of where we're a bit like, But I suppose the one thing with that is that it gives people, like younger people, the opportunity to go out and explore. So in like the kind of Amish way of going out into the world, if they've got more opportunities, and like a teenager's like, I don't really like this, I want to go live in the city.
I was reading about
they get the opportunity to do so.
There is still some nomadic tribes in Papua New Guinea who kind of live a lot like these people, but some of them have a choice. I saw a thing that they'd a current congressman in Papua New Guinea, like his cousin still lives as like a nomadic tribesman in like the forest. He was like his father like made the decision to go to a city and learn. And then he grew up from there. But he was like, and he's like he met his cousin and stuff. He's just like, and obviously they can then translate language and stuff.
That's interesting.
Like, that's just fascinating.
Well, that's the opportunities that come with it. And like you said about the Brazilian guys, like some of them probably went, nah, actually I'm gonna go back kind of thing. And some of them went, oh yeah, I like this, there's TV and beer and like, or whatever.
Also, like the education thing can be a negative or like imparting your views, but like things like medical stuff is like invaluable.
Like they said about the guy who had the jungle ulcer on his foot, and like it was like the size of a golf ball. It could have fucked his life up. He could have had like gangrene or whatever from it if that saved his life. And there's like kids getting inoculations and stuff. It's
that's all good.
Yeah.
So that was
David
a blank on a map.
Passion project.
It's good. Do you want to give it a rating?
Yeah, I really like this. I think it wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfect in any way, but it wasn't like, I think if the whole thing had been focused on that last third, I would have rated it like overall really highly. But I still think this is one of the better things that we've watched.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this.
I'm tempted to go for like an 8, to be honest. Nice. I don't know if that's a bit mad, but I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it.
And what? I was also thinking an 8. Yeah. Part of me was like, maybe a 9, but I was like, actually no. Like,
I think because most of it wasn't 9. The end, some of that was maybe 10, like sections of it.
The bit with the counting was a 10 out of 10, all the way up to the neck.
There we go. Roll credits.
But I'm also going to give it an 8 because I was like, that's really fun. So cool. I enjoyed that, which means that brings us to the end of Passion Project. I'm sure we'll revisit this later on at some point, which I will very much look forward to.
Yeah.
But for now, it's time for the next section, which is Personal Projects.
You have left me no option but to authorize the seizure of your personal
projects.
So, Sam, what have you been watching, reading, playing, or writing?
I watched a film on Netflix.
Oh, yeah. That sounded very, scary.
Oh, I watched a film. No, I watched Pain and Gain, which is the 2013 film, which was directed by Michael Bay, of all people.
Okay.
Starring Mark Wahlberg,
of course,
Anthony Mackie, and The Rock.
I think I may have seen clips of this on TikTok.
You may well have done, yeah. So it's. I think it's almost exactly the 10-year anniversary of it, and it was a film that kind of went under the radar a bit because it was in the middle of Transformers fever. So it was one of his films he did between that, and it's much more low budget, and it's based on a true story of, in the mid-90s, these bodybuilders in Miami decided that they were going to do like a kidnapping plot to make some money.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a kind of farcical semi-heist kind of thing with these 3 bodybuilders, the three guys I mentioned.
Is Mark Wahlberg built in this?
Yeah, they're all pretty built. Anthony Mackie's actually pretty built, considering. I mean, he's always, he's been in good shape in Marvel films, but he's more kind of bodybuilder kind of shape in this.
Yeah.
and The Rock is actually very good in this. I think it's probably his best role that I've seen him in, like acting wise, because it's in the era where he hasn't fully lent into the character of The Rock, as like the film star Rock, where he's kind of the same in everything.
Yeah.
Because he shows like a bit of vulnerability and he gets kind of scared and he's got kind of nuance to his character. He's like a born again Christian who is a recovering addict and kind of goes back into the deep end when he gets the money and that sort of thing. So there's kind of like levels to his character, whereas most characters now is just
The Rock.
just movie guy kind of thing. And it's good. Like, it gets quite dark. Like the plot kind of unravels, and Ed Harris is like this detective who gets put on to kind of like a private detective.
Good old Ed Harris,
and he's very good as always. He's pretty much normal Ed Harris kind of thing. And there's a couple other supporting characters that you probably recognize, character actors. But it was a good film. I've heard people kind of recommending it now as it's come up to this 10-year anniversary and been like, it's not a classic Michael Bay. There's some kind of actiony bits, but it's quite low key for
not
him.
Your big explosions.
There's I don't think there's any explosions at all in this.
Wow.
Maybe one as it kind of ramps up a bit, but yeah, it's about 2 hours, but it really kind of keeps you going the whole way through. And they kind of do the original plot about an hour into it, it's kind of resolved, and then it's kind of their undoing and them kind of trying to do the same thing again. But they're all kind of messy because they've all got their own things going on. And yeah, it does a little like these are the real guys at the end. It shows their mugshots, and yeah, so they didn't necessarily all have very good endings, as you might imagine for something like this. Yeah, I mean, they have the death penalty in Florida.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it literally goes like sentenced to death, and I was like, fuck, okay, because they're not likable characters, but they're, you kind of, at least with
you see their side.
Yeah, you see their side of it, kind of thing. And yeah, it was a really good film, and it's on Netflix. I'd really recommend it if you're up for like that kind of heisty vibe with like people. It's a bit like, we did the White Rabbit heist with the guy who dressed up as all the same people and went on the dinghy kind of thing.
Yeah,
that kind of like bro heist thing of kind of thought out but not fully thought out, a little bit rash and kind of manic. It's that kind of vibe, but for 2 hours.
Nice.
and based on a crazy true story.
Michael Bay. Did you ever see The Island, the Michael Bay film?
That's the one with
Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson.
No, I haven't. No.
It's I think it was like 2002, so it's like almost before he went full Transformers explosion, Michael Bay. And it's like Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson live on this like secret island where it turns out they're just like clones that are like organ farmers.
Yeah.
And it's run by like Sean Bean. And it's like, it's pretty good. And it's like it's got some of that stuff where you're like, I can see how Michael Bay developed into the Michael Bay we know him as now, but it's not quite there yet.
That's a bit of this. I think it's him going back to his roots in a way, in that, like, because he did Bad Boys and stuff like that. I've seen Bad Boys 1, it was okay. Everyone says Bad Boys 2 is really good, and I didn't quite get to that, but I think it's more akin to that than Transformers or
because like people forget, like from like Bad Boys up until Transformers, he wasn't just the big explosion guy. Like,
no,
he was action guy.
It was action guy, and
it was only with Transformers that he turned into like these big spectacle stuff. Really,
it was him being given this massive budget and just kind of being a kid and playing around with it. Really, isn't it? Like literally playing with his toys. So
I saw a TikTok the other day of the modern Transformer toys, and there's these. There's like a dinosaur one and the Optimus Prime truck, and you just talk to him and it's like Optimus wake up and he's like hello, and it's like transform and it like stands up and transforms, and I was like, that's fucking ridiculous.
And it's cool, but it's also like it kind of defeats the point of you meddling it all around and stuff.
And it was like I want to say a foot and a half tall, and it's like that's going to cost hundreds of pounds.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger, so it was either. It might have even been late 90s. I can't remember how old I was, but there was some new range of Transformers toys coming out, and they're primarily 80s, the original lot. So it would have been, generations into it kind of thing. One was the dinosaur one, Dinosaur Megatron and Optimus Prime. I remember getting a little catalogue thing of toys, and I was like, these ones look fucking cool. I really, really wanted it. But I think even then, that one was like the most expensive one.
Yeah.
I didn't end up getting it, and I was just like, yeah.
I think the only Transformer toy I had a little Optimus Prime, but it was literally like maybe like 4 inches tall,
like the old like Star Wars size one,
and you could fold it up into
but it was
like 3 moving pieces, to
almost
put it
like a Hot Wheels size car at the end. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. What have you been up to?
So I went to the cinema on Friday.
I think I know what this is.
Yeah, it was one of those where I was like, I've got nothing to do on a Friday night. I'm just going to go to the cinema. I went to see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem.
Yeah.
It was funny because it was like in the cinema, it was probably about 20 people in there.
Oh, really? Friday night's not really.
Yeah, no, I'd say about half of them were like teenage boys, like they're together. And there was a few like dads with like little kids, and then there was just me on my own. And I was like, okay. Yeah. It was really good. It was really fun, and like it kind of gives you like it makes sure you get to know each character, each one of the turtles,
because they're proper like teenage ones, aren't they?
Yeah,
teenage ones.
Yeah, and it's just good fun. Like they switch around the origin a little bit. It's still green ooze, but it was like an experiment which creates the villain, the Superfly.
Right. So
and Splinter in it he was just a rat.
Okay.
And then when he found these turtles got some ooze on him and just like looked after them as like a single dad with these things. And then, but he was like shit scared of people because he's a rat and they treat him bad. Okay, so then he decides to learn some like martial arts and stuff and trains them. But it's a whole thing of like an ongoing thing of like, don't ever interact with humans because like they will hate you. They'll be scared of you. Obviously they're sneaking out to try and do stuff.
Yeah.
And they eventually meet April, who's like more sympathetic, but like it's really good, and it's got loads of these other mutant characters.
I've seen little bits. It's got lots of big names doing the different voices, and for a fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I'm not massively, it's lots of characters from the history, isn't it?
There's no what's his face? Shredder's not in it, but it's teased in.
Yeah, okay.
In post credits, but like it's mainly Superfly's the villain.
So it's like mutants on mutants rather than the foot lot.
Yeah, it's not the Foot Clan, but like it's like the basic premise is some of these other mutants like we've been treated badly. We want to kill humans, basically. It's got these big name casts, but the actual 4 turtles are like unknowns,
they're
essentially.
All unknown kids, aren't they?
They're teenagers, and they are just like really fun. And I was like thoroughly enjoyed it. It has some like emotional bits towards the end where they're like they want to be accepted and everything. And it's like I came out of it just like that was just a really fun film. I'm glad I went to see that. So
it's got the kind of Spider-Verse-ish kind of animation, like more. Not necessarily like classic animation, but like a bit more kind of artistry to the whole.
More like drawn, and it kind of like a bit like dirtier because they're like sewing stuff, but like you can see like drawn on like dirt essentially.
Okay, cool.
And it was a really fun like animation style, like the way they move around. And I would
like to see it.
Yeah, it's cool. And obviously it's Jackie Chan is Splinter, and there's a couple of bits where you're like, oh yeah, that's definitely Jackie Chan.
I always think it's funny that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles kind of even. I don't know if it from the start, but the origin kind of changed to being like, well, from the start, they are like a parody of Daredevil, aren't they? Because Stick is Splinter,
Foot Clan hand.
And then I don't know if it was from the start, but the ooze that got Daredevil's eyes is the same one that hit them.
Yeah, I think that was the original. I think it was like issue 1 of Teenage Mutant Turtles had the same like
because it used to be
as Daredevil.
It used to be like a proper black and white scratchy kind of comic that looks very different to the animated series, and it was quite adult at times as well. I think it was quite like violent and that sort of thing, and it was only really when it got brought into the kids cartoon that they kind of toned it down and that sort of thing. So it's got really interesting. There's a comic series called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin or something like that. Have you heard about that?
No.
From the last couple of years, and it's come back into the public eye because they've teased they're doing a video game about it. But it's like set in the semi-future, and there's only one of the 4 turtles left. And throughout the whole run, you don't, or from the start, you don't know. You don't know which one it is, and like they've been through loads. Maybe it's post-apocalyptic or like kind of feudal post-apocalypse, and it's like a more back to the roots of the kind of darker serious
stuff,
thing.
yeah.
I don't think it's a little mini series. It's not particularly long. I think I might actually check it out. But a game of that might be quite fun, I imagine.
Yeah, and like a Teenage Mutant Turtles, there's something new all the time, and like most of it passed me by. I've never been like massively into them, but like I watched some of like the cartoon. I think I had like a couple of action figures.
Yeah, I think I did as well.
But I was never like huge into it.
That one that was on Netflix, I think I mentioned last year, that's kind of, it's not quite as intricately animated as this, but it's quite nicely animated. That was a good one.
And there's the Michael Bay again produced films, which they looked a bit weird.
I think if we spoke about before, if we'd had more time, we would have silver screened up to this one, because there's even a Double Bill Manhattan Project titled episode from the series, from one of the series.
But
it's one of those things.
I'm glad to see it, 'cause it was good fun. And there has a post-credits that teases a sequel, so I imagine there'll be another one in the works.
I think they're doing a TV series with the same world, because the main cast are all young. They can just get into it. So it might just be a thing to bridge the gap between the two things, just little adventures. But would you say it needs to be seen on the big screen necessarily?
Not necessarily. I think if you can go see it, 'cause it is really good fun film, but it's not like... You don't have to see, it's. I mean, when I want to see like something on the big screen, it's either a big cinema event or it's like visual stuff.
Yeah, and it's the visual side of it, isn't it?
Yeah, and like the animation is good fun, but it's not like your Avatar kind of stuff.
No.
It's, and you could watch it at home.
It's not like the Meg 2, you know.
It's not like the Meg 2, which you have to see in cinema. But I highly recommend it. So if you do get the chance, I'd check it out. I'm sure
I've got two other things I want to see as well, so we'll see how it goes.
Maybe just spend a day at the cinema.
If I've got any fucking days to go to the cinema, bank holiday maybe, so
cool. Check out the Turtles, and I will keep an eye out for when that inevitable sequel comes. I will definitely go see that.
We can silver screen that if it's not in 10 years time.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, we'll still do it in 10 years time, but we won't be called the Silver Screen Project then.
No. Have you seen? Did we talk about this? The fact that BBC had put on a classic film on Sundays, they've called it Silver Screen Sunday.
I think you mentioned it on pods.
Bastards.
At least they didn't call it Silver Screen Project. Although that might have built up traffic for us. You never know.
Yeah, and we were there first. So they wouldn't be able to do anything about it.
I'm sure there's other ones out there. Definitely. Yeah. Cool. Nice.
But cool. So I think that brings us to the end of the pod.
Yes.
Hopefully you enjoyed this, and I don't think us being in a different studio made any difference to the quality.
Once we run it through a little edit, I'm sure it'll sound exactly the same.
So hopefully you can give us 5 stars anyway if you haven't already. It's always appreciated when you do. So just on your little podcast listening app, whether it's Spotify or Apple Music, or I think there's other
Chaser.
Yeah, there's other ones people use.
Google Podcasts.
Amazon Podcasts. There we go. We're on all of them. Give us 5 stars on all of them. Or you can get in contact with us directly, can't you?
Yes, you can. So if you want to send us an email, you can shoot it straight over to the projectpod@gmail.com. So if you want to talk about undiscovered tribes in Papua New Guinea, or if you want to recommend Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle episodes for us to watch, please send us a little email. You can find all our social medias in the link tree in the episode description, where you can also see new episode posts go up. Most of the time they'll be Wednesdays, but the occasional Silver Screen Project just pops up whenever, really.
I don't even know when it's going to pop up. It's just there on my feed, and I'm like, oh, cool.
I told Lewis that Meg was coming out on Friday. It came out on Monday, so it surprised even Lewis then. Got to keep him on his toes.
It had open Spotify. It had that little red dot next to the project, and I was like, oh, that means something new's out. I was like, wait, what have I recorded? And I was like, oh yeah, the Meg.
Yeah. And clips on TikTok as well. So,
yes, everywhere you want. But yes, thank you for listening. I will hear you next week.
And I'll see you in Papua New Guinea, biatch.
Bye.
Bye.